All right, welcome everybody.
Hey,
How
hey.
y'all doing? Enjoying your lunch?
Yeah.
All right, I got about 10 to 15 minutes. Try to keep it short. So I'm going to show y'all the big picture, and in every level of healthcare, there's always a big picture. But I'll go over the little points about each healthcare system. Okay. The objectives are the three healthcare systems, we'll define them. We're going to identify the scale of breast and cervical cancer on a global level. We'll describe the signs for Ebola virus. We'll explain how obesity may contribute to some cancers. And identify the three components of the determinants of learning. And we're going to define your big picture. Ooh. All right, we're going to come back around here now. Local public health, that's you guys, right? Us here. Okay. You guys have a variety of tasks that you have. Everybody's got a specific service you provide. And but it also, the big thing I saw, it includes assessment, policy, and assurance. You know, you want to, as in everything you do, you always want to assess before you make a conclusion of what you're going to do. And what comes to play with that is also policy, but also assurance. You know, not that you're being partial, but there's policy, right? It's not that you don't like somebody, or it's not because of, you know, they don't deserve it, but there's policy too. So, but there's also assurance that let them know, look, there's still hope. We can still help you. You know, there is access to what you need here. Okay, so we don't shun anybody just because of their economical status. You know, everybody is, anybody can come in here and they can get the assurance they will get some form of help. Okay, but they will be educated, right? We will keep them accountable. Okay, that's the big picture of that. All right, now let's go and talk about what makes up the national healthcare system. They regulate foreign and interstate commerce. You know, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Before we accept anything that's like a lot of medicines that are used in Europe, you know, are we allowed to use them here? Some we don't, some we do. You know, the national healthcare system. From my understanding, there's the Constitution doesn't specifically assign the government to do anything in healthcare, but it does somehow charge us to do with any taxes or spend to promote general welfare, helping anybody on that level when it gets to that point. There's the Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration of Aging, Children, Agency for Healthcare and Research Quality. That's one of the ones that we're recommended to use as nurses when something's questionable. Is this evidence-based information even valid at this point anymore? So that's where we would go to kind of get the big picture on that for something that people bring about. Like this has always been done this way, and I'm sure you guys have gotten that traditional answer about, well, we've always done it this way, you know. But is it still valid? So, and then the DoD, I know Ms. Karen said there's people that one of the people you guys can't accept is TRICARE people. You know, people that try to come here and have TRICARE, you can't accept because that's not that's a different healthcare system. That's Department of Defense. Okay, now let's go to the next one.
That's only for certain
Yeah.
services though.
Yeah.
We don't have a contract with TRICARE.
Yeah. So now we got international healthcare system. I like this one. It says, "Who cares?" Who cares? Yes, who does care? WHO stands for World Health Organization. This is public health function at an international perspective. So when we report to CDC, CDC also gets information globally, and it kind of gives us at home here in the U.S. An idea of where we can get involved, where we need to send out information to train, educate people to be on the same page. Some reasons to get involved globally is to protect us and from the public, communicable diseases. One of the ones that we already known is Ebola, right? It's already come to home over here, so we're trying to contain it. An interest in humanitarian efforts. I'm sure some of you guys have traveled overseas and learned about how do you care for that culture, learn about the culture, and also you also cross-trained, maybe might have cross-trained, especially when I was in labor and delivery. My teacher said she had gone over there. She did a lot of training on prenatal care, during delivery, and even postnatal care. So it's, that's something that we get into internationally, and also says benefits economics and diplomatics. So if we can get people to, what do you call it? It even fights, gets, how do you say, you get other countries to stop doing certain things so that it doesn't affect us on a global level, like terrorism. We want peace treaties, little things that can affect our health. We don't want that. So a little sidebar there, where the World Health Organization came from. It says the UN gathered together in 1945. One of the things they discussed was global health. How we're gonna be all on the same page on that level, that aspect of health. It says it came into force on April 1948, so that's why we celebrate World Health Day on that day. So that's where that comes from. All right, now what's next? Let's see. Now, well, we're talking about the international healthcare systems. I tried to look for a couple articles that kind of give me a big picture on a couple of them, and they talk about where did this Every Woman's Life program come from? If you look at it from the global perspective, this article I found is talking about the right time to tackle breast and cervical cancer, and it says in low resource settings. So it starts even. There's an article that came about that they said in the last 30 years, breast and cervical cancer just getting higher and higher and higher. So what they did is they started establishing what we have here, what we call EWL. They started establishing it down in the other our neighbors local here, South America, Canada, Mexico. They started wanting to establish something like that there, so that we can dispel the myths that on the global level, if you can't afford it, then you can't get it. And they try to dispel that myth for a lot of women globally, to let them know just because you don't have access or you can't afford it, it doesn't mean you can't get it. That's what we're here. We're here to make, raise awareness that we're here to help, and you don't have to wait till it's too late. And this is spread out and through the whole, from the global level to also our local neighbors here in Canada and the Americas. Okay, so it's really making a big difference. The little that we're doing with prevention, you got your primary prevention, but we have to have also that secondary prevention that we screen, and not wait to the tertiary prevention, like me and Marissa talked about, how people wait till the last minute. And this Every Woman's Life raises that awareness that you don't have to suffer. You can have that access. Just because you can't afford it doesn't mean you can't come in. All right? So that's on the global level. Now let's look at another big highlight on the global level. That's protecting our borders with this Ebola virus. So what I did was just look at some points about what it can tell us about the Ebola virus, if they've told us that we can look for, and some symptoms of this kind of virus are sudden fever as high as 103 to 105, intense weakness, sore throat, headache, profuse diarrhea after 2 days after. So that's kind of when you do your assessment, you're going to ask that, how long have you had diarrhea, and when did you develop symptoms? Okay. And then the severe symptoms are renal failure, and you got DIC, and you got which rapidly ensues after 3 to 5 days. Now, the Classical, that's I would call this the classical sign of Ebola. It says it's from the Filoviridae, am I pronouncing that right? Family, Filoviridae family, which causes hemorrhagic fevers. It means internal bleeding. Which it's the sign of that is the bleeding from nasal or oral cavities. Um, it's spread by direct contact with body fluids. It's not airborne or droplets, which means coughing or sneezing. Don't go running to try to get some shots or anything for it. It's not going to spread to you by that. But it says National Institute of Health will start a vaccine trial in September. And the alternative for the vaccine says it's going to be the blood transfusion or plasma from a prior infected Ebola virus client. So that should be interesting. All right. Now, I'm going to go off a little bit before I discuss national. Just talk a little bit about educating the public with what we call as a patient-centered care. I'm sure y'all remember that coming up in nursing school. It's all about the patient. Everything got us around the patient. So we've gotten from a group culture. Now, if you notice how America's evolved, even throughout the world, it's now becoming more of an individualistic, culture. So when I was in nurse educator class, I just learned about big three things I learned about educating are, what are the three ways we can narrow it down to see, okay, how can I figure out what this person needs? Are they even ready? And what is it that they are good at for me to determine how I can come make my approach? Because how you learn doesn't mean it doesn't determine how somebody else is going to learn. So you're going to have to kind of think outside the box. Okay. I know we've grown. Culture has gotten sophisticated, right? So it's how do we narrow it down? How do we teach somebody? So the first thing, what are the needs, right? Why are they here? Okay, but you also got to look around them. Like, what is it? What other things are they dealing with? So besides the need. So, and then you got, are they ready? I know we had I sat in one of those out screenings for the EWL last week or this week, and I noticed how the person looked like she was in denial and she was very nervous. So this person's state of readiness probably wasn't all there. And then the learning style, sometimes you can't figure that out until you learn how get them to a point where you can get their focus and get them past their expression, express themselves. They're a little bit in denial, let them grieve a little bit. Okay, so nowadays, we know that we can go look up a culture and say, okay, they must like this, or they must think like this, or I must mention these things so they can understand. But nowadays, when we look at for example, someone from Latin America, Europe, or an American, they will not learn the same way another Latin American or European or American would. So it's all about just looking at these three determinants here. Why are they here? What do they need? What is the state of readiness? Are they ready to learn? Or do I have to let them express themselves or let them calm down? And then I can determine what is the learning style. So that's how we now narrow it down so that we won't have to look too much to the culture side of the individual. Okay. All right. Let's talk about a little bit of the national health issue. What are some of the national health issues that I've learned about is I thought about obesity. So this National Care Institute has concluded that obesity can contribute to a hormonal imbalance which leads to many cancers, which includes breast and endometrial. So when I thought about when you were doing the EWL, I said if these women have kids, it'd be a good thing to maybe do some educating for their children, especially if they have daughters. What are the chances? So we would ask them, what is your activities like? Are your kids doing okay? And we can kind of instill that in them so they can think about it not only themselves, but they can also look to their kids. So maybe if they're already in the point where they need treatment, we can kind of educate them if they do have kids to like, okay, now we need to kind of give them the bigger picture about now look at your children. We need to educate them. So we need to see if they're affected too, but also we need to look at their activity level and do they have a sedentary lifestyle? What's going on? So how can even though mom's might not be doing well, we can always help her help the children, help the kids. So I always say the source of our children are women. We have to take care of our women, especially here. They make up the family. So that's just what I thought about when I saw that. So, all right. Now, what about here at home? What about you? How do you care for yourself? I don't know if anybody knows here is familiar with Miss Jean Watson. She's the one that came up with the caring theory in the 70s. So in the 70s, late 70s, 1978, Miss Jean Watson, she saw that healthcare technology was starting to distract the caregiver from the patient. So, you have to come in, I have to meet this criteria, you have to meet all these qualifications and this and that. So now, because of that, she says, well, you need to measure your ability to care for the patient too. And not just qualify for the piece of equipment, that equipment, or measure this or measure that. But measure, now she wrote a book to where you can even measure how genuine are you, how authentic are you, how what's your presence level? Are you really there for the patient? That's what Jean Watson was more worried about at the time, and not healthcare technology. She was trying to get the healthcare giver attention about what about the patient. And now it gotten to the point where now the caregiver doesn't even think about themselves. We've forgotten about what about me? What about there's an article that I found a long time ago, and it's these two authors. What they did is they wrote a story about a nurse who was a nurse for 30 years. That's a long time. She took every family through the grieving process, for 30 years. And all of a sudden, her husband gets taken away. What is she going to do for herself? So what this article talks about is how you define hope for everybody around you, right? You want to give hope to everybody, right? But now, how do you define hope for yourself, when it happens to you? Because, it is important that you take care of yourself. And what Jean Watson did was, what these authors did was they wrote an article about this nurse who went ahead and applied the 10 Carita factors that Jean Watson came up with. The 10 Carita factors is something we use to apply in a healthcare setting that only focuses on the patient. It doesn't care about any medical condition, any equipment to measure, just the patient. So how to care for the whole person. But then she started talking about how do we measure ourselves, how we respond to our situational crisis. And so these authors went ahead and did an article and talked about Marlene, and Marlene defines hope. She ended up learning to define hope for herself, so that when it happens to her, she was prepared for that when it happened to her. She lost her husband, and she had to move. She had to change her environment, change her job. Still was an RN, but she had to change a lot of things. So she had to look at what am I missing, so that I can feel whole again. Because now she lost her role as a wife, and then she lost her role in where she was at in the place where she lived.